The following program was provided by a valued member of our local community. Rogers TV is proud to support local producers and share local voices, ideas, and opinions. For more information, please visit our website.
So welcome to this week's episode of The Paint Box. My name is Jane Roy. First episode of 2025. I'm actually kind of looking forward to this season. I think it's going to be great. Looking ahead, we're going to be visiting some more local artists, some folks who work in glass, some folks who work in pottery or ceramics. We're going to talk to some folks who actually appreciate art as well, some collectors. The visual arts community isn't just the artists and the folks who show the work. It's obviously the people that come and see the work as well that are just as important. We're going to continue to visit and work on visiting some of the groups in town, whether it's the Art Council, whether it's TAP, whether it's some of those groups like Beal, the Beal Art Program, that are involved in the education. And there were some events. The London Artist Studio Tour is coming up. This week, as we kind of ease into it and ease into the second half of the season, we're going to do another how-to video. This is kind of the second how-to video in oil. The first how-to video was end of last year, where we did the pepper. If you remember, the whole purpose of that pepper in terms of the exercise was understanding still lifes and values and relationships of those values, not necessarily a color. The color didn't matter, but the relationship to the color. I love color, so color does matter to me, but we're not matching colors. We're not trying to get everything perfect. So this exercise is about simplification, again, in a different way. With the pepper, we simplified the subject matter, and we simplified the size, and we simplified our process a little bit. But in oil, we're going to continue to simplify even more. But most people love oil. When I grew up, I hated still lifes. I really did. I'm actually growing to love them right now because they're helping with all sorts of brushworks and style and things. But what I really wanted to do was landscapes. And I know a lot of you love landscapes as well. So this is about taking a big brush so that we don't get caught in detail, taking simple colors, and again, sticking with a very, very small size. So before I do get set up, we're actually going to talk a little bit about the materials, not a lot. Brush. I'm going to use a 3/4 brush. This is actually fairly new. Doesn't matter the size, doesn't matter the kind. Just try to get a fairly big brush, but you basically just use one. This is what I'm using. Whether yours is a little bigger or a little smaller, it doesn't really matter. Brush. Paint, I'm going to use one yellow. This is a yellow middle. I'm going to use one blue, an ultramarine blue, be nice if that was beer. An ultramarine blue and an alizarin crimson. Again, it's not important that you have these exact colors. What matters is that you have some yellow, whatever it is, whether it's cool or warm, one blue, whether it's cool or warm, and one red. These three colors will determine the temperature of your painting. But again, this isn't about getting the painting right. This is about an exercise and playing and learning about seeing the big shapes behind the detail, in particular around landscapes. And finally, of course, we've got a white. I'm going to use a linen piece of paper. You can use whatever it is that you want. I'm going to tone it, and we're going to watch us doing. You're going to watch me do that. And then I'm going to use palette paper for the palette. And the palette, this is where the paints go. Generally, I use glass, but we're going to stick with palette just for cleanups. A rag. So much that's really important. So whether you have a rag or paper towels, it doesn't matter. Got my sketchbook, or at the very least a piece of paper to write on. I do have a pencil just to do some of the drawings. I have a straight edge. And then the mediums. I have a bit of paint thinner. This is our odorless paint thinner. It's specifically made for artists. Really important with regards to paint thinner that it's important that you understand if the odorless is best because you don't actually you don't breathe in all that smell, but it's really important to remember that it's still toxic. All that it's removed is the odor, and you're breathing in this anyway. So even if you've got some odorless paint thinner, make sure where you're painting is ventilated, or at least you get out and get some fresh air every so often. And then normally I use a thing called Liquin for my medium, but a lot of people use linseed oil. If I can't find my Liquin, one of the products of, beginning of the year is it's always a great time to clean out the studio. And I've been in the midst of a big clean and now I can't find things. So give me a week and I'll have it next week. But so we're going to use some linseed oil. You can use walnut oil, poppy oil, or the two other things that you can use. And then I tend to just use what we have. We have a cat, so I use the like a cat thing for the thinner, and I just use the top of a lid of I think this was a spaghetti sauce. So the point of all of this is make sure that you use the things that you have. You don't need everything. You don't necessarily, I believe artist grade paint is the best paint that you can have. However, if budget doesn't allow it, there's nothing wrong with your learning when it comes to student grade paint. There's nothing wrong with that. And then, of course, we have our subject matter. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to do a bit of a mountain scene. It's got mountains. It's got a bit of a river. It's got trees, and it's got something in the foreground. So we're going to use this scene, and the purpose of this is to think about big shapes and not get caught in the details. So let me get set up. I'll get back, and then we'll get painting. So welcome. Here we are. We are set up. What I've actually done is I have taped my 6x8 linen canvas paper. So this is linen. This is primed linen. I taped my palette paper down, and so you basically use typical painter's tape. The other tool that I needed was I had real difficulty opening up the oil. The linseed oil. So I used one of these things from the kitchens, which was great. So I've got my thinner. I have some linseed oil in there ready to go. Now I'll use the thinner a little bit more. I've got my paintbrush, and I do have a pencil ready to go and a ruler. So those are the two other items I'm going to use right now. Because what I want to do is, before we put the paint down, I want to prep. And I want to prep the canvas so that I can draw it, kind of at least have a little bit of idea of where I'm going. The first hint, and again, you can do this differently. Some people use a sketchbook. Now we've got our sketchbook handy. We'll keep that close by should we need it. But basically, one of the first hints I do is when you're learning and you're scaling, one of the best things to do is if you're going to print, I prefer to print off something, and I try to get it as close to the same size as as the surface that you're using. This is very close to 6x8. It's a little bit larger, but that's okay. A little bit larger. And then what we're going to do is grid. You see the grid that I'm going to make. Sometimes I do grids in the middle, particularly if I'm learning. Sometimes I use the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds is a great rule for some compositional things. If it's a little more, I actually see this as very, very simple. I see very simple shapes, but it looks kind of complicated. So what we're going to do with this one, instead of the right in the middle, 1, 2, we're actually going to put this into thirds. This grid actually helps us where the basic shapes are. And the shapes we're looking at, and I will use pencil here, the shapes we're looking at, so in landscapes, oftentimes there's background, midground, foreground. So the background is the mountain. So there's that's the background. The midground are these trees and the water. So there's the midground. That's why I think it's a really good photo. It's a really good landscape. And then the foreground, obviously, and when things get closer to you, they get darker. The foreground is the path and the tree. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to actually make sure there's no white on this pitching up. So what we're going to do with these three colors is we're going to actually create a bit of a brown. And again, sometimes when I'm just starting, I will generally use ultramarine and burnt sienna because it creates this really nice, warm, neutral brown. How do you make brown? Yellow, blue, and red. Part of the reason that what is nice about starting with three colors is you actually start to learn a little bit about what you need. Now, I've taken like a lot of thinner because, I want this to be thin and I want this to dry pretty quickly. Let's take what we have, and now obviously I don't have enough paint, but we're I'm gonna create a little bit more. So that's a bit blue. So if it's blue and you want to make it brown, what do? You add this complement. The complement of blue is orange, so it's a little bit of red and a little bit of yellow. I want to make sure that there is no white showing. So we're going to get in the corners. So we use a paper towel and tend to like shop towel a little bit better than regular paper towel because it doesn't have the lint. However, use whatever you have. We're going to remove it, and guess what? We can't see our drawing right now. So we need to go back and put our drawing back in. Okay, I've got a big marker. So here are our shapes. There's the shape down. There's the shape at the top of the trees. That's where the top of the bank is. That's the bottom of the bank. And here is our path. And then obviously there is there's our tree. So that's what we're going to draw on. And I'm going to make sure the shapes are there. So, okay. So the other thing I've lost is actually the thirds. So there's a third, there's a third, there's a third. It's about there, about there. So you watch me do all of that work, and it's basically there. It's not there anymore. So let me I'll pencil it in quick. Okay, so there's my grid mark again. The top of the trees is kind of here. So the top of the trees is about there. The top is about the middle. And you'll actually see this. I've got this off to the side over here, but you'll see this picture with the grid marks on an inset as well. Okay. So we've got basically the top of the bank, the bottom of the bank. There's the top of the bank. There's the bottom of the bank. This is kind of the grass, right, that's coming through. Then what we're doing is we are putting into the path. And now we're going to do the tree. So the tree, so it's the top of the bank, comes across here, comes up about halfway, and basically is like this. That's kind of your tree. Now that's right here. This is your tree. So that's sort of the dark parts, obviously. So I'm just going to darken them up so you can see them. The dark, that's the grass. Okay, now we're going to put some of these trees in. So again, I'm going to we're just going to make little triangle shapes in front so that, basically so we know where they are. We'll start over here. We see these trees are stacked. We're going to put a couple in. We're just going to put some of the main ones in. So let's go back to this. Again, I want it just a little darker. I should have... This is a little dark, but that's okay. It should be a little lighter, just so we can see these. And what I'm seeing is kind of a tree right here and one in front. And the good thing about this exercise as well is it's going to teach us to use our brush. That's a big brush. That's like 3/4 of an inch. It's going to allow us to cover some areas. But when we draw, we use the edge of our brush. So it's going to help us to understand that these brushes are a lot more versatile than just what's there. So when we start with the blue, we'll start another pile here. Blue and white. Now you can tell that this is dirty. It's actually quite dirty. So we can make it with a nice cleaner blue, and it just means I didn't clean my brush well. But you either clean or you start with a new pile, and that's actually okay. I don't mind that. It's the fact that it's cool. If I want to warm it up a little bit, what do I put in? I put a tad of yellow, and even though it goes green, that's okay because it'll work with a little bit. Again, it's not about getting the right color. It works with the combination that we have. And if you ever notice a lot of the Impressionist painting, have a look at their skies. They're green. Now again, it's not even close, but we're not color matching. That's okay. What we're doing is we're putting in a sky. And this is where we are going to cover up. Okay, that is a nicer blue. And we're going to go into the tree. So again, by itself, that looks actually very green. Make it a bit deeper. Give it some depth. We'll make it a little bluer. And we're going to go into the mountain a bit. And the other thing we're going to go into is the tree, because you'll notice actually there's sky holes in there. Actually, I have trouble leaving things. If you want to put a little bit of clouds in there, by all means put a little bit of clouds. A little bit of white. The thing that people love about painting is that they see your brush strokes. So okay, now I'm going to go into the mountain. And again, I'm not trying to match it to here. I'm actually thinking about how this is a little bit darker than the sky. So the mountain here has got the two colors, got some of the pink, but basically we're going to just start with the trees. And when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about comparing it to this. It's a little bit deeper. Mountains, as they get back, get bluer. They get purpler and then bluer. We tend to lose the yellow from them. So it's called atmospheric perspective. Have a look at a mountain in the distance. The mountain in the distance is incredibly light. So we're going to basically start with some blue, and I want this to be cooler than what's there. Now this blue had a little bit of yellow in it to make it a little bit of green. We're gonna go with the ultramarine and the white. We're going to put a little bit of red in it, not much. I just wanted a little bit deeper. And okay, so it's a little bit purple, which is okay. And purple adds a little bit of interest to it. So again, so when I look at the drawing, this is the shape that I see. So the thing about painting is you start with bigger shapes and you go down to smaller. Okay, we're going to, so now we see the trees over on this side. And this is all with the colors that we have. That's the blue, the ultramarine blue, the white, and a little bit of red. It's not meant to be exact. It's not meant to be the perfect colors, but it's meant to portray an impression. Okay, so now we're going to work on the rest of the mountain. What you'll notice is it's the value difference that's here, but this actually kind of looks pink, looks very salmony. But what we're going to do, and when we talked about atmospheric perspective, we talk about how things become bluer as they go farther away. And yellow is one of those. Yellow is the first color to drop out. So we tend to think, the camera picks it up as well. It's not the color that we actually see. Again, it doesn't matter. What we're wanting is the value difference. So I'm going to try to go for a bit of a peachy color, a bit of a neutral one. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the purple that we had here. We're going to add a little bit of yellow. A little bit of yellow and a little bit of red to try to come up with something. But now let's lighten that up a bit as far as the peachy. And again, we're not going for the right color, but it's not that far off in terms of what's there. And again, it's about the value relationship. So we're just blocking in right now. We're just going to block in the parts of the mountain that have that lighter color on it. If you're having a bit of trouble with the shapes, obviously, continue to look at your grid and where things are, but also squint your eyes. Squinting the eyes takes away the detail. And, the other thing to remember is, this is a mountain, but people are only going to see your painting. They're not going to see this. So, if your peak is in the middle, if it's it's a little bit different than what's actually there, that's okay. Because again, people aren't seeing this. They're not seeing the painting. Sorry. People aren't seeing the photo, they're seeing the painting. And if it looks like a mountain, that's awesome. So much the better. Okay. I want to lighten some of that up and make it a little more vibrant. So let's just add a little bit. Again, yellow sort of drops off. So I just want to add both. Just give it a bit of a different hue as well. By just making it a little bit different, again, helps to add some of that depth into your painting. And you can see where some of this peeks through. Okay, awesome. Okay, so I'm going to clean my brush. And that's we've got the background done. I think that's okay. I'm not 100% happy with all of it, but see, that's the whole point of this. As this comes, as we move it forward, this is not the focal point. This is not where your eye is going to be drawn. Your eye is going to be drawn to here, in this area, where there's vibrant colors. So, not to worry. Now, how do you make green? Yellow and blue. So let's just keep adding some yellow and blue. See where it goes. Let's see what kind of green we're looking at. Okay, so that's not so bad. That's not bad, but it's actually a bit too yellow, so that's a good color for some of the trees. So let's just start over here a bit. Let's make it a little bluer. Oh, this is how we practice. Sometimes with big brush, you got to make sure you go in with the edge. Okay, there we go. Okay, so there actually we've got some good value, and we're just going to start working on the trees. Might make a bit of a mix of the two. The other thing this color actually is a little bit good for is you know, getting the trees in a little bit more as well. Just giving that hint of green up. So let's just put some in. Okay. So now that I've done that and actually made those trees kind of that distance, I actually do need to buff this color up a bit and bring it forward a bit more. So I do want it to be a little bit of a deeper green, not as deep and as dark as the green that's in the front, but let's work to get a good green here. Not as much white. I'm gonna desaturate a little bit. Just put a little bit of white in there. Let's see what that looks like. It's not bad, actually. How do I make it darker? A little bit more purple, a little bit more yellow. Now, by painting these shapes in, obviously, this is the trees that are going to sit on top. Now, I could have painted right across again, but then I'd be putting paint on paint. So this actually is kind of helpful in terms of the planning, knowing that those there. So if there's not as much of this paint on done, I don't have to work to deal with it. So you need to figure out, again, we're just painting some shapes right now. Trees go up and down, so that's kind of what I'm doing, even though a lot of these trees have branches that go this way. But again, I want an impression of trees, so we're heading up and down. And then same thing, I'm gonna just paint into this tree a little bit. Okay, now how does that look? Okay, so that's not bad. Now what we're going to do, though, is we're going to go to this, we're going to make this even darker, and we're just going to set it apart a little bit, and just going to add this adds depth. So if we do this kind of at the base of the trees, where is it darker? It's mainly darker at the base. So we're just going to put some darkness down there. Okay, I do want a little bit more yellow in this to make this. Now that's actually a good color. That's a good color for the trees in front to make them stand out a bit more. Now again, I'm painting up and down, and I'm painting these trees as kind of these cones. And then what we're going to do is later on, we're going to make a highlighted side, and we're going to make a bit of a darker side on these trees. So not a perfect thing, but it's there. So let's go back to the trees in front. How do you make a green highlighted? If you add white to it, it actually gets really unsaturated and becomes really pasty and pastel-y. If you want to highlight a green, you add more yellow. Yeah, so we're just going to add a little bit of yellow to that. Where is the light coming from? So you can tell this is in shadow, so the light is behind this. So what we're going to do is we are going to, and it's a little bit difficult in this, so you basically pick a spot, but it looks to me like the reflections are coming this way. So I'm going to put the highlights more towards the top of the tree and then put some of the darkness at the back. So, and it's not meant to be a lot. It's just meant to sort of, because they're still off in the distance. It's not the focal point, but it's just to make